Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Deep Thoughts. Today's episode is based on a comment that a close friend of mine made. And it's one of those comments that you want to pay a lot of attention to because it comes from a friend of mine who's extremely informed. But more than that, he watches politics from all sides all day long. He knows everything about Q, knows everything about what every mass media outlet's saying. Twitter accounts, I should say, from both the left and the right. And he just looked at me and he said, he was talking about, he's at a flow of consciousness, but then his last statement was, this thing's going to be over soon. I said, why is that? And he goes, well, how many more wars can they have? And I was like, hold that thought. Dip, 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 dip. Put it in my phone. I was like, that's going to be an episode. Let me hook you real quick. If I said war, it never changes. But I said, what do you think about when I say the word war? I did a whole episode on it, I believe in season 1. We opened it up with Black Sabbath. It was awesome. If I say war, you probably see some stock news footage in your brain. If you're a normal citizen. If you're an ex-soldier or active duty soldier, you're seeing your own personal experience. But let me highlight something and bring a bunch of other stuff into this category that we call war. Most of us have had some form of a war online, in a comment section on a post. It could be something stupid about your favorite movie or your favorite Kool-Aid brand, flavor, or it could be something really serious. We've had wars between family members. We've had wars between friends. We have wars in our minds that we're scared to even acknowledge. I'll give you some examples. One of the things that the instigators of war, which is what this whole thing is going to be about, you can think of it as part 2 to war, the war episode. They love finding a subject matter that is not something that we all agree on. They love subject matters where they've polarized a particular region of the population, if not the entire planet, in a 50-50 or very close approximation of that. And then they just keep jabbing it, right? When I was a kid, I used to have 2 friends that were brothers, and for whatever reason, they like to fight. It's almost like they like to fight. And I remember being able to say something to one of them, and because one of them was more dominant. The younger one was more dominant than the older one. And, I don't have any brothers or sisters, so I would watch them hit each other or whatever. And it's lightweight stuff, nothing big. No teeth are coming out. No eyes are getting poked out. And I just go, you going to let him do that to you? Got to fight back, man. And boy, I'd keep going and keep going. Now, I only did it with them, so shame on me. But anyway, I was a little shit starter for those 2 people. But there are controversies like, do you believe that abortion should be used as a casual form of contraceptive? There's the huge debate, which is it a mental illness to look at your gender and find yourself outside of the normal sort of LGBT community, T is where you start getting into that kind of gray area for most people, right? Because you're straight people and you're gay people, well, they like who they are. I mean, they look at the mirror and they go, I am my gender. I dig that part. And I just like my own gender. There's no debate as to what they are. But now there's like 60 plus more, almost 70 more genders, because someone wants to dress up like a furry, someone wants to crap in their diapers until they die, and some family wants to take care of the old guy in diapers because they lost their child to college and life and they want that responsibility again. There's a billion combinations. If someone put a gun to my head and I had to make up 15 genders, I would be a dead man before it ever got to 10, because I can't conceive of that many genders. And yet there's some drop-down list in the EU with all those genders. There are people that have never started businesses who have all these opinions about capitalism. When the people that have started businesses and benefited from it, there's a war between those two people because one knows about what they're talking about and one doesn't. You see what I'm saying? War is everywhere. It's on every single level. And believe me, if tomorrow they could think up another reason out of thin air for us to hate each other and to war, they would. And they figure out formulas, right? They figure out formulas that play on fear, right? So they might go to the Deep South. You might find a community that's fairly quarantined from any other race. And they just wiggle a few guys into the bars or into like Masonic clubs or whatever. Maybe some of those clubs that burn crosses. All those, from my perspective, my information, that stuff is next to nothing in population. But they start telling stories about how those races do all these things around the world. And, maybe some of them are true. They're not likely to happen in that area of the world, but they freak them out. And then all of a sudden they get them to double down. And then they start seeding them with the resolution. Well, you know what you got to do, don't you? And they're fearful of the answer, because the answer is going to be risk. Well, you got to get rid of them all. They're like, oh my God, but I'm afraid of them. I'm literally afraid of fighting one. Well, we'll all get together and in numbers, we'll get rid of them, right? But you have your psycho version of that, where they're trying to get rid of someone who's just a little bit different than them. I mean, can you imagine in New York City? It was kind of portrayed in Gangs of New York, the movie, but there's a lot of truth to it. You have the British disliking the Irish, the Scottish, the Germans, the Spanish. Here they are, all from the same region. But they find a way to carry their prejudice across the river to America. And they fought like cats and dogs. White on white crime, right? You get a bit of an olive skin thing in Spain, but they found a way to fight. And then when that all calmed down, then it was any race that looked different than them. And of course, the Native Americans were savagely murdered in between all that stuff, right, when they started moving west. But again, they had to sell the savage word, savagery. They're savages. They had to sell that word to the white man so that as they move west, that's what they said. Those are animals. If the little kid said, why, Dad? Why are they animals? Well, see, they haven't even discovered the wheel yet. Oh, yeah. I mean, the wheel, kid. That's how primitive they are, and therefore they're evil and they're savage, right? And, James Cameron did a good job stealing, again, the Doctor Who script called Kinda, from, I believe, 1981 or 82. There was literally a mirror copy of his movie Avatar back in the day, where they were calling all these indigenous tribal people, played by white people, but they had tribal makeup on. They were calling them savages so they could steal all their land. Same thing that happened in Avatar. I got to upload that photo tonight for you guys. I made a composite photo that proves that the two are the same. But anyway, what's really frustrating is that you have this old playbook. It's a joke. It is like, oh, well, we don't need to worry about the baby boomers getting convinced. And again, it's just talking about that age range, the 50s and overs, or the 40s and overs, because they're not going to fight our wars, right? We need 18 to 23 to enlist. They're so impressionable, it's ridiculous. They want to be a part of something big. And so, hey, they come in and there's legitimate military training. It's great for you. It organizes your life, gives you a sense of purpose and camaraderie. Awesome. But there'll be, hopefully this has changed for America, but, we're all going to breathe deeply in the meantime. And we're only one little tiny 5% of the world population. But everybody else can get these old playbooks and start telling you, oh, yeah, that's the boogeyman over there, and that's the boogeyman over there. You got to fight, you got to fight. And when I was a kid, it was almost completely fictional. Sure, part of the world is doing something that I wouldn't do. There's laws that we wouldn't dare follow in America, but they weren't going anywhere. They weren't migrating to Europe. Today, you have a George Soros putting billions of dollars into the migration of immigrants from one place of the world to the other part. But prior to him putting in the billions of dollars, there was nearly $1 trillion invested in that region of the world to teach them all to regress their religious beliefs back to infidel passages that had been largely erased, and then resurrected and empowered the Sharia law sects of the Middle East. Again, it was largely erased by 1960. Again, Iran was like this totally hip cat place to be, man. The Rat Pack would have gone and performed there. And then all of a sudden it turned back into like the Stone Ages. Now again, I think the majority of everybody in the Middle East just wants a peaceful life. They want to live in their own region. They don't want to get bombed. They don't want to be invaded. They don't want to do any shady deals with anyone. They just want to live a normal life. But you don't need that many, do you, to fall for this other game? 10 to 50 million people, which is nothing in the world population. Just need that many to kind of believe all this stuff. You sanction their education. You promote schools that you pay for and subsidize, and mosques that you subsidize. You find a couple radical people that were beat up when they were young, or perhaps now that we've been at war in that region for over 20 years, roughly. I mean, really, it's kind of 30 plus years because of Desert Storm. So you got some poor guy that's lost his whole family to some bomb that we dropped over there as United States citizens. And of course, we are the evil. We removed his family members. So they find that guy and they instigate up all of his beliefs. What my friend was alluding to was that the world is getting fatigue. Fatigue on many levels. We're getting fatigue on social media. We're definitely getting fatigue on fake news. We're getting fatigue on technology. A lot of us live in our cell phones because, if you got to eat a meal by yourself, why not? You can only people watch so much in a particular venue. But if you go into a place at a weird time of day and there's nobody there, what are you going to do, stare at the clock? Watch some shitty television somewhere? Nah, you're going to crawl into your own world. But cell phone sales are down all over the place. Technology itself is the salvation for all boredom. It's starting to go away. Well, usually, if you set out a goal, it has a deadline. And there's some result you're trying to get. As Tony Rockefeller told Aaron Rousseau, they were going to start a 100-year war with no enemy, meaning you couldn't find them. They didn't belong to a country. They're nomadic killers. And sure enough, we got Al-Qaeda, right? The CIA database of all these warlords, all these Taliban guys, and then a bunch of other mercenary folks, a bunch of people that were duped. And so they started the war for about 15 years, and then they had major fatigue. We weren't beating them. And then all of a sudden they said, we beat them. Oh, but now there's ISIS. Oh, which I don't know why Europe calls them ISIL. I don't know what the L stands for. They rebranded the same old thing, but then they had to fund them. They had to arm them. And that's where you get the Clintons and the Obamas and the McCains and the Pelosi's all working together to have guns made, shipped around the world, given to Benghazi. Benghazi gets fried. They send a bunch of them up. Somehow they got a bunch of BMWs and Mercedes to drive around in. They had a bunch of American M16s, a bunch of Varishnikovs. And so they started back up again. But then it got really tired, Every country that wasn't a part of the World Bank is under attack, especially Syria and Iran. They just kept playing the same game and the same playbook constantly. They're telling themselves that they can, it's just almost like a tenacious business, right? You can just keep pushing on a business to accomplish a goal. It's sort of like that scene in Willy Wonka's Chocolate Factory where the Veruca Salt's father, he used to be he's in the nut business, and so he took all of his ladies that pack up the nuts and he had them unpack bars of chocolate because he promised his daughter she'd be the first one to get a ticket. And she was only the second or something like that. But anyway, You can push and push and push in a business, and that's usually what these bankers are used to getting, which is essentially anything that they want. They just hire people to do it. What do you need? What do you need? Stop bothering me. Give me one list of everything you need. Give me a deadline when you could be done. And then like Darth Vader, if they don't fucking deliver, squeeze the neck, they're gone, ring in the next dude. Let's go. Well, when the element of accomplishment involves the human consciousness and the human DNA that is free from, microchip placements, when we have largely a freer world than they want us to have, because we can get on a plane and get someplace else in the world and we can talk to each other online, well, they can't force us like slaves. And so they push and they push. And we get tired. And we get tired. And the whole rationale for why you're doing what you're doing starts to end. Right? How many of you have been in a bad relationship that you stayed in simply because you got addicted to the process of the relationship? But then eventually, over time, hopefully before it's too late to find somebody else, you realize, what the hell am I doing here? This person's absolutely horrible for me. Maybe they're a horrible person as is. Maybe they're just a fine person, but they just don't want what I want. And so you just kind of walk away. A lot of jobs do that. You're in a job. You have a philosophy about the job, and then you kind of just go, what am I doing? I don't want to do this. I'd rather be homeless than do this. And you walk away. And to your miraculous surprise, you find the person that loves you more and you get a better job. How many more wars can they start? Well, what's interesting is that I would normally have, maybe 2 years ago, said, well, Jesus, infinite. They can just keep going and going and going. I might have been skeptical about physical wars between two countries. But now I think it's a little bit different. I think people are starting to wake up. Big time. It's obviously not my epiphany. We're calling it the Great Awakening for a reason. I think that they played so many cards in 2016, and the Democrats in the United States have played so many cards in 17 and 18, none of which are called progress, that we're now done. Candace Owens, a brilliant woman who is leading the march for the, I think she's calling it Blacksit, something like that. She is trying to get the black community in America. I'm not going to call them African American. Sorry, I'll do that every once in a while, but we've had black people in this country for 400 years, and they have earned the right to be called Americans. They're not black, I understand. I was friends with Michael Collins from Venice Beach, and he made a great point. He goes, we only have a couple colors. You white people have 1,000 colors. You're colored. We're brown or black at best, right? We're not even black. But anyway, she's trying to teach the communities in the United States, both those that are prosperous, those that are stuck in, CIA-oppressed ghettos, that they've been had by the Democratic Party. Absolutely had. Now, is there a couple contingencies on the right? Sure, I guess. There's some racist groups in the world. But I tell you what, we're all waking up to the point that we're realizing, now, wait a minute. We love each other's food. We love each other's music. We love each other's culture. We're not terribly different from each other. And they're part of the base race that built this country, that built it, that gave it character. You like Elvis Presley? We better give it up to Little Richard and Chuck Berry and a bunch of other blues guys before them. Right? You white boys that like breakdancing, go look back at like the 20s and 30s when they used to dance like that on TV and movies. There's no white people in those shots, okay? So we've learned to get along, and to a great extent. But she is getting rid of the war, at least that they've been fighting for decades and decades and decades. A bunch of snowflakes are turning into Republicans. Now, they far-right radical Republicans? No, they don't belong to a militia. A lot of them still won't own a gun. But they saw themselves get duped. They went to a protest told to hold a sign and say a bunch of things bad about somebody. Then the newscaster came up and said, what are you protesting about? About this. Well, tell me about that. Looked to their friends and they got nothing. And they're like, okay, I'm going to get mad at you and spit at you, but as soon as I'm done spitting on you, I ain't coming back to one of these goddamn protests. I'm going to find out why I couldn't answer the question. Oh, and then some of them are part of the walk away movement. There's a funny meme going around that says, it's got Pelosi yelling in the picture, and it says, of course I'm for open borders and illegal aliens, because no one in this country votes for us anymore. What are they telling people in South America? They're convincing them that we have just, troughs of gold coins and food and free houses and social programs that can take care of them. Well, who do you think's telling them that stuff? They're selling them upriver. When they get here, they don't get in. And now they've trekked completely across their continent, and they're not going anywhere, and they're hated by those in Mexico who are like, get the fuck out of here, man. We don't have any money for you. We barely have money for ourselves. The average citizen in Mexico makes $500 a month. That's it. Okay, there's not a lot to go around. War. It's all over the place. It's in every category of everything. They want you to be at war with yourself. They want you to struggle with paradigms of especially the double speak, which we call, the cognitive dissonance, where something is a particular way, but they've told you you can't acknowledge it as the way that it is. And so you sit and struggle inside. It's a little PTSD you got for every single subject that they get you to buy into. The gender thing is huge. And there's a few people out there that just are sick and tired of the shit, and they're like, look, you're a boy, you're a girl. If you don't like to procreate like we are designed by either the evolution perfect algorithm of those who think that the world came from the Big Bang, or for those of you who are religious and believe that there's some sort of divine creation or maybe an alien or whatever, you're designed for an innie to go into or an outie to go into an innie, and that's the only way that our race procreates. It's the only way. Anything else is an odyssey, a freak show. And they're sitting there going, look, Boy Scouts are for fucking boys. I'm really, really sorry. Girl Scouts are for girls. It's just that simple. If you are butthurt because you don't belong to the other group, then you need to go see a psychiatrist or psychologist and work out your personal problem. Because we are designed to be this way. War. But then maybe you're an empathetic person. You're thinking, well, geez, the whole planet, because you look at everything through the eyes of, social media, mass media, and liberal-owned organizations that pump the television shows at you, you're seeing that, it's being introduced constantly. So it's like you think it's never going to go away. And so you're like, well, okay, I need to come up with something that's like, all right, I got friends that identify as some other things. They're perfectly wonderful people. That never comes up in our conversation. They don't whine and complain that they weren't able to accomplish something in their day because of the identification that they have. So you think, okay, well, that's cool. Those people are cool. And then you see on TV and on the internet these freak shows, these like 1 in a billion people. And you think, oh my God, some people are on social welfare, literally because they have so many tattoos, so many piercings, and so many cosmetic surgeries that no one will hire them. I've seen 2 or 3 articles where they're whining. They've turned themselves into like fucking like physical Halloween costumes. And hey, nobody has a problem with them doing whatever they're doing to themselves. As long, we wish them the best, put it that way, right? I don't lose any sleep over it. I don't dislike them at all, right? But I sit there and I think to myself, well, if what they're doing is destroying their ability to get a job, well, then I guess we have to allow them to get jobs. And then when my little, 4-year-old walks up to a woman that looks, or a dude that you can't even fucking tell anymore, but they look like a monster because they worship the devil. They split their tongue in half. They tattooed their eyeballs, full facial tattoo. They've put fucking horns like a devil on their head. And I'm supposed to say, it's okay, Bobby, right? Or Rebecca or whatever. My little daughter's freaking out because she's only seen this shit in her fucking nightmares. You see how they got you? Right? They create these controversies in your mind, no matter how tolerant you are of the world. They can always create something that's absolutely crazy. The pride parades are really hard for most citizens. They're hard for me, right? All this nudity that is illegal, right? You piss out back of a bar, I've mentioned this before, but you can get a ticket for that for decent exposure, and they can choose to put you on some sort of pervy list for the rest of your life. You got to report to your neighbors that you're some sort of sexual deviant just because you pissed out behind a bar. But during a pride parade, again, nudity is everywhere, from the age of whatever to whatever. And it's super explicit, right? You got guys giving guys blowjobs right in front of little kids. You got old men wearing dildo costumes with their junk erect, pushing out the front. Chicks driving by with their tits out, you know? Again, we should love the human body. I get that whole thing. But this is all in a context of programming the mind. This is what we do. And kids are looking up to adults to decide how they're going to behave themselves, right? And if anyone denies that, you're just a fucking idiot, right? We have Mother Goose syndrome. You can watch a duck attached to a dog, and it thinks the dog is its parent. That's how super powerful that association is. But it's only during a certain formidable amount of years, right? War. It's everywhere, right? Controversy, conflict. It's not always a jerk being intolerant. It's someone trying to preserve the human race. It's trying to preserve cultural norms that we call norms. Okay, I know that what is normal, there's no normal necessarily speaking, but it's ways that we use to protect our kids, right? We have female bathrooms and male bathrooms. Why did we do that? Ask yourself. At some point it happened, right? In fact, I don't even know. I don't know when they split it apart. But why did they do that? Because guys should be pulling their junk out in front of little girls. And no one really worries about a woman going into a male bathroom and raping some boy. It doesn't happen. Women aren't programmed to be irrational for procreation. Men, we have this thing where, an 18-year-old kid gets, way before that, but I mean, you get to this point where you're driven beyond rational thought. And so the problem is that when you act out in this irrational mode of thought, you're not rational, right? And so we have a huge problem in society right now, which is date rape, right? And they're not all roofie date rapes. The girls that said, I'd like to maybe go through a couple bases with you, but I sure as hell don't want to go through the last two. Saving that for someone special, a moment that's special, not in a car or whatever. And it doesn't go down like that, right? Because the guy is completely driven by a primal force that he can't pull his head out of his ass. Now, like, take me. I've been very fortunate that I've had that. When I had that feeling, I was with someone special and it was all consensual. But, I think my lucky stars, let's put it this way. I think my lucky stars that it didn't happen with someone that got me all the way up to the very edge and then said no. Now, as an adult, I've had that happen to me a couple times, and it was a cinch. It was like, hey, man, I don't do anything without permission. Trust me, right? And it works out. But I think some dudes carry that all the way, into their whatever. They're probably 40s and 50s, They never had anyone say no before. Maybe they were married for 25 years, and the woman liked it every day. And then the first girlfriend he has is like, hey, no, wait. We don't know each other good enough. And he's like, no, you're going to love it. Boom, right? They screwed the guy up by indoctrinating him. Maybe he watched too much porn on the internet. And now he's at war with a woman, wherever the hell they are. He needs to back off, but maybe he doesn't, right? I think most of you know that in the Great Awakening, one of the big things that's happening is that we are trying to mature as quickly as possible. But on that pretense, the idea is, or in that sense, the idea is that you know people that can't wake up. And you can't understand why they can't wake up. It's a bizarre thing. I've eaten dinner recently with kind of a quiet, polite, liberal. And, I hear he's very, very intelligent, very kind with his delivery on any subject matter that he thinks I'm going to disagree with or what have you. I'm a bit of a bull in a china shop with that kind of conversation. When I really know someone, I'm like, yeah, you can hear everything that I think. And I know you won't agree, but I want you to hear me as raw and as real as I am, because I'm genuine, right? Try not to be rude. But you'll hear indoctrinated phrases. You'll hear people talk right out of, talking points that were handed to them by the mass media. And you're sitting there waiting going, okay, I've heard all that before, because I watch more news than you do. Even your crappy news. I watch it and I listen to it. So now give me any line out of your brain that isn't off mass media. Crickets, man. Nothing. Zero. If they elaborate, they simply change channels in their brain. They'll tell me like a bunch of CNN stuff, and I'll go, hey, well, what else do you think about that? Because that's all the stuff I hear on mass media. And they just go, PBS, blah, 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 right? And they just change channels in their brain. And so he's fighting a war with anybody else like me. Maybe one of you guys in Europe, anywhere in Europe, Great Britain, Europe, whatever, do they tell you that Russians are bad over there? Because in America, it's weird. The only people that tell us that Russians are bad are the Democrats, the liberals. Our president was an asshole if he ever talked to Russia in the months preceding his presidency, even though, according to the indoctrinated warmongering fucking playbook, Russia is the number one military threat against the United States of America. Okay, so wouldn't it be nice to be friends with those guys, to go talk to them? I mean, isn't it, if you can have a conversation with your enemy, an intelligent dialogue with your enemy, aren't you making progress, right? Putin's not a guy that sits around and, pouts like a baby. I don't know what that guy's IQ is, but it must be large, okay? But they've got us worried about a collusion thing. None of it happened, but I almost think, well, it should have happened. Like, we should have talked to those folks, not colluding to steal an election, which is a whole line of fucking bullshit, right? What is it? They said that, I think it was Instagram or Facebook or whatever, they bought $4,600 worth of ads. Let's put that to bed real quick, shall we? Let's say you're different than me, or maybe we're the same. Shit, I don't know. But you have a belief about Brexit. You have a belief about the EU, about whether Trump should be president or someone else should be president. You have that belief. And what the liberals in America want you to believe is that you looked at a Facebook ad and you changed your fucking decision. Right. I would wager that that is below a single percent of a single percent of a single percent in reality. Like if we had the God facts, right? We ask the God, whatever the rules are, planet, how many people converted due to a Facebook ad? God's going to be up there going, what? Oh, no, nobody did that. It's a fucking dumb idea. No one ever does that. He's doing something else, right? The whole basis of the collusion is an IQ test, and anybody that believes it is failing the IQ test. I mean, we're talking about 0 on the knowledge scale, on the intelligence scale, and maybe a couple points in the smart scale, maybe. But they're never able to attach logic to fucking reason to fact. It's ridiculous, right? But again, I'll say it right now. Anyone who's running for any major presidential, chancellor, or prime minister office in this planet would be more qualified if they had a good relationship with Vladimir Putin or some of his direct reports, right? They'd be more qualified because they're like, look, we're going to stop this goddamn Russia thing. That these people are somehow evil. Go watch Russian car crash videos. They got other things to worry about. They're trying to figure out how to cross the street and look both ways, and they're trying to figure out how to basically make a left turn without crossing in front of traffic. They got much bigger fish to fry than to be in some goddamn world war with somebody. By the way, I think it's my episode called Fake Enemies. It got demonetized. And why did it get demonetized? Because I was against hating other people. Isn't that funny? I petitioned to have it remonetized, not because I need the $4 it's going to generate over 1 year, but just to see what would happen. They're like, nope. And they won't fucking tell you. They won't tell you what you said or what's in there that's bad. It's obviously not foul language. They let that go through every day. It's amazing how YouTube videos can actually use dirty words in the title, and they can use dirty words as slides within their presentations, and they'll still be monetized. It's the weirdest thing. I mean, it's good. But you mentioned some contextual reference towards, well, against the deep state, and they'll shut you down. Let me give you an example of a conversation starter, or at least a segue. I don't want to say this, sort of a pause in the conversation that we don't have. And that's just to lean across the table after someone has, again, if you're hip to this episode, you've been hip now to, a dozen categories in which we war with each other. And you just lean up across the table and you go, hey, aren't you tired of being at war with everything? With foreign countries in your brain, with political parties, with genders, with whatever. Whether or not McDonald's is better than Chick-fil-A. Aren't you tired? The Windows versus Macintosh, iPhone versus Android. Aren't you tired of that crap? Now, what would you do if you said, and you know the rhetorical answer is yes. You just know it before you ask. And then when they're kind of looking at you like, yeah, of course, and you're like, okay. If you and I can decide at this table that we are now sick and tired of this crap, can we end it? Can we end it? What would you do? The very next step, to not hate everything, not to be at war of everything. And the idea might be to say, well, we got some time. We're eating at our favorite restaurant. We're at the kitchen table. We're out back. We're fishing. Wherever the hell you are. And you say, well, let's figure out where we came up with this opinion that makes us dislike things, right? For a lot of things, especially marketing department-driven concepts, it doesn't even matter what the other person's doing. You use an iPhone. I use an Android. Do I care whether or not you're using an iPhone? I don't. When it comes to an organization that one is loyal to, the biggest litmus test you can throw at someone is to say, in your lifetime, where have you been benefited by that allegiance to that group? Again, for those people who have listened to all my episodes, I've said several times, in your lifetime, what laws have been passed that benefited you or your children or anybody that you know? The only one I ever got was, obviously, we had a civil rights thing in the 60s, but most people I'm asking are black or white, not black, and so they can't really claim that helped them personally. The other one I got was seatbelts. Okay, so the biggest one we've had in the last 100 years in America was civil rights, and probably, if you go back far enough, the ability for a woman to vote, and sort of some of the basic equality things that we didn't have set up because culture was different when the Constitution was written. But a lot of those have been fixed. But that offers a tremendous amount of decades, right? The seatbelt thing was somewhere in the 70s, I think. No one ever started wearing them until the late 80s. But that's like, the 90s, the first decade of the 2000s. We're about to finish the second decade of the 2000s. And, a really staunch liberal might say, Obamacare, because their employer pays the premium and they don't pay the premium. But I can tell you, every single friend that I have on this planet who lives all over, I should say in America, because I'm going to talk about Obamacare for 1 second. One of my friends who's a teacher who makes nothing in the Midwest was paying $1,400 a month for her and her husband. Neither one of them have any pre-existing conditions or cancer or anything, and a perfectly healthy daughter. How do you think they went on vacations? They didn't, because Obama let the pharmaceutical companies and the insurance companies draft the whole fucking thing. And then he made it a draconian existence tax. You can't get any worse than that in this country. That kind of shit happening in Venezuela or fucking Brazil or something, you'd expect that kind of weird shit out of some pseudo-democracy. But you can't call it the land of the free and behave like that. Now, we should be able to have a group program for insurance, and the premiums should be nothing. I mean, if 350 million people were insured under one company, Jesus, if everybody paid $100 a month per person, that company would be rolling in trillions of dollars in 20 years. And only having to shell out a little bit here and there, right? Little cough medicine here, thing here, a broken arm cast. Oh yeah, a couple people are going to get cancer and die. But imagine that all the things that poison us in this world were then regulated by the same organization that said, look, like the Russians did it, right? The Russians pulled, microwaves, like I've told you guys, because they're like, this makes people sick, or can. Certain foods in that machine will turn into toxic foods, right? Others will just get really gross tasting. So they yanked it. Smart. How long would cell phones last in a country that was trying to keep its people healthy? GMOs and shitty water and fucking, planes that are spraying clouds now. Gee, what did we do before 1997 to get clouds in the sky, right? What did we do? Oh my God, how did they even exist before planes injected them into the skies, which then coincided with the entire area coming up with upper respiratory problems, right? I don't know if you guys have noticed, but the amount of people dying of cancer in their 50s and 60s, all these celebrities, which is just, it's where we see it reported the most, because we don't pass around our, necessarily our loved ones unless you're on Facebook and you're having to go through a tough time. But, I have a very close friend of mine, extremely close friend of mine who suddenly ended up in the hospital a few weeks ago. His liver and his kidneys started failing catastrophically. He's not a diabetic, and literally the hospital has no idea how that happened. So everyone's sitting around waiting. He's on a list now to get a new liver. He's in his early 50s. He doesn't drink, right? I mean, he's like abstains from all things that are, immediate health risks, right? That would at least injure those two organs, right? Doesn't do any drugs. It's like there's this slow apocalypse happening, right? And out rose 5G. Well, that's going to be a party, isn't it? Instead of going to your high school reunion, you're just going to meet everybody you ever knew in an oncology department, right? It's unbelievable. But what are the wars that we should fight that we don't fight? Well, that's one of them right there. We don't fight wars for our health. I mean, we fight them on our personal level. One of you just reported in the comment section that you have started to leave your cell phone in a different room at night when you sleep. And they said, look, it took a little while for me to notice, but eventually I realized I was going to sleep a lot better. But what do they do to make sure that you think that that person's crazy? They make a show on HBO, I believe it's HBO, called Better Call Saul. Fabulous show, right? Seriously. Bob Odenkirk is a genius. I think the guy is Michael Keating, I guess his name. He was Lenny from Lenny and Squiggy. He plays a brother of Saul. I think the show's up again for another season, but anyway, Keating is like, I hope I have a Keating, something like that. But anyway, he's an amazing actor. He plays a guy who's suffering from radio frequencies. He can't be next to light bulbs that are on, anything electric. His brother has to put his phone inside the mailbox along with all other jewelry and things, with even a watch, that ticks. He wasn't like that before, but then he became that way, and then he's suffering. Well, they exhibition this fictional character to be a kooky person who believes that RF waves hurt them. Why? So that anyone else in your life that says that RF waves, which are a given problem in this world, right? It's screwing up fucking bees flying around, like I said. It's making you unhealthy, gives you leukemia, gives you diabetes. I mean, these are all things that have been completely documented and entered into the World Health journals. I don't want to say the World Health Organization because they're there to kill you. A lot of you have kids. Those kids are being forced into vaccination programs to go to school. I think a lot of states are still optional on this, but for the ones that are mandatory, a few years back, California, you could file a little report a little page that said, I don't want my kid vaccinated. It lasted for 2 years. Then it lasted for 1 year. And I think the rumor now is that Jerry Brown, who wants to murder all the brains of children, probably because he's a fucking moron. I mean, he's really an idiot. Jerry Brown is a categorical fucking moron, you know? There's a lot of them that are devious, and this guy's just an idiot, right? But he tried to sign it away. Well, now, what's the deal? You're born and raised in California. You want to have your children here because your parents are here. All your friends are here. It's your world. It's where you grew up and had a great time, and you didn't get vaccinated. And look at you. You're smart enough to make some money and live in this area. But your kids won't be. They're going to have ADHD problems. They're going to be taking Ritalin because they can't concentrate. They might be so awkward by the time it's time to find a partner that they're not going to find a partner. They're going to find a weird partner, you know. They inject the war everywhere. When you come home at night, if you're living a conflicted life anywhere in the world, what does that feel like? You come home and you're like, God, that sucks, this sucks, that sucks. And you feel lost, right? Those are individual wars, right? Remember when that old wise phrase that says, pick your battles? And what the phrase means is you can't fight every war in your life all at the same time. You can only take on what you can take on. The recommendation usually comes down, just pick one thing, defeat it, and go on to the next thing. You'll only pick the next thing is only one thing. And get them all just knocked down, just like targets at a carnival. We as human beings will always have conflict in our lives. It's just the way it is. Sometimes people get to that point where they feel like they don't have any conflict, and that does happen every once in a while in your life. And when you get to that sweet spot, I can't stress enough, pay attention, smell those flowers, but also work defensively to keep what you have. And don't be unrealistic, right? You could have, like one of the sweet spots you'll have if you have children is there's just this age range where your kid is awesome. They're well behaved, they love you, they love your spouse, they pay attention, they want to please. And then, if you let them watch TV, if you let them get on the internet, if you let them pick any friend at all to bring home, they'll start rebelling against you because everything is against you as the parent. What is Christmas about? Well, if you don't spend money on me, you don't love me. Same thing with Halloween. Okay, and the birthday. Well, what if you're broke? You can't pull it off. But you don't tell your kid you're broke because you think that they understand that that's failure. Instead of just going, hey, honey, we're really tight for money right now. So this particular year, it's going to be a little lean, but doesn't mean I don't love you very, very much. And when we can rebound, because we will, it's just the way it works. When mommy and daddy make more money, we're going to, we'll make it up to you. But honestly, these things don't control how much we love you. It doesn't mean anything about how much we love you. It's a tough conversation to have with the kid, right? Because they're going to go to school, and what's going to happen? They're going to see the other kids come in with a lot of shit. Brand new clothes, maybe a new bicycle, a new computer, a new phone, a new iPad. They're going to talk about their PlayStation 24 at home. You got to tell your kid, look, this is going to probably happen. It's going to suck. But in the end, when you finally make your own money and you earn these things for yourself, your level of appreciation for these things is going to be 10 times what your friends feel when they play their games, when they get their new bike or whatever, their new clothing. When you get a new shirt, it's going to feel 10 times better. My dad and I, when we lived together, starting about 10, it was tough, man. We were broke. We were broke. Talking about paycheck comes in, pay all the bills, there's $50 left for 2 weeks, for two people. Now, thank God we shopped at military bases for food, so we didn't go without food. But imagine that. My dad would bring home like 6 packs of jeans. Okay? Cheapest fucking shoes you'd ever had, because he's like, you just grow out of them. And he was right. I was growing like a weed when I was really young. But what happened? I just told you in an episode I lied on an application so I could get a job at a movie theater at 13. I think I told you guys in a different episode, the guy who ended up running that place got busted for pedophilia with his own stepkids, but that's probably why I got the job. He didn't touch me at all, but he was a weird dude. Told lies after lies, but they were kind of funny. He had a little blemish on his face that was due to probably acne or something, and it was this little loop in his skin that made a little hole. And I asked him, I said, well, why did you get that? And he'd go, oh, this guy hit me with an ice pick. I was in a fight and a guy stabbed me with an ice pick. Total bullshit, but we're like, oh, wow. And he was like, God, I can sell this kid anything, right? But anyway, the reason why I bring that up is the following, because I forgot to make a good point. My dad couldn't afford anything, working his ass off. And so I got a job because I got embarrassed to wear the clothing that he was bringing home. Now, you could say, oh, that's, bad on your dad's part or whatever, depending on what kind of person you are. I doubt that's any one of you. But it was the greatest thing in the world because I wanted my own money. And it drove me to work, And I got in at 13, and before I even crossed my 15th birthday, I didn't work there. I can't remember how long I worked there. It seemed like about a year. But I am 14 years old. What I was able to learn by myself, because they gave me a key eventually, I'd open the theater up. I'd get the tickets ready, get all the concession all filled up. No one else is there. The only thing I had to have supervision for was loading the platters with the canisters, right? So we got the movie in a bunch of canisters, and we have to splice them all together and feed them onto the thing. I was always under supervision for that, but I could splice a fix. If the projector died and ate up a frame, I could pull that out, splice it together at the station, and get it back in there by myself. But I would sell the tickets, call in the tickets to the movie, whatever headquarters, And then I'd just sit there at night, and the whole place would unload, the employees would go home, and I'd just sit inside the ticket booth watching Main Street, 14 years old. And I made my own money. Eventually after that, I worked at a movie rental place, and I worked at Walmart, and I had my own dough. Immediately, I bought my own clothes. As soon as I got my car at 14, I'd drive to the city next door, which is Wichita, buy all my own clothes. Started looking the way I wanted to look, and it never ended, right? You're like, where did you go wrong, dude? So for me, being broke was a war. America was changing, Some people are ready for that change, and some people aren't. Now, I probably should have said this at the beginning. I don't want this episode, if any of you got to the end, to rile you up, make you angry. Because what does that feed? Well, just ask the emperor, right? It makes you go to the dark side, right? Knowledge is power, right? How many of you know that if you were at any of these crazy events that have occurred in America from, say, 2001 all the way till today, any of these crazy things, and you were a passerby with what you know now about those events, even if you don't have all the answers, at least there was some fuckery going on, as we say, your anxiety level would be low because you're looking at something you understand. In some cases, you're like, nobody's died at this location. That's all bullshit. Other times, you're like, shit, people died, but this is those three guys getting in that truck over there with the duffel bag dressed like SWAT guys who should be literally running back into the location because there's supposedly a killer on the loose, and these guys are leaving because they're the actual shooters. So knowing thy enemy, right? You may not know the names of the people that mess with you. I certainly don't. But you know their organization. Again, we have a new phrase that's all over the world now called deep state. Huge. It's a huge win for us, a huge feather in our cap that's being used in mass media. And then eventually, when we hear people, like Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and those douchebags and all their little affiliate, shifts and those guys, right? The caretaker of the pursuers, right? We smile. We're not happy that they still have the ability to get on camera, that they have the ability to indoctrinate and keep indoctrinating tens of millions of people, at least in the United States of America. Right? I don't know any of these people overseas, really, besides maybe some Angela Merkel kind of folks, right? Some Macron kind of folks, right? Macron's getting his ass handed to him. It's awesome. Merkel ain't running for re-election, I tell you that, right? But they're going to try to replace these people with exactly the same kind of people. They're going to try. And they're literally going to sit in conference rooms. I mean, we have to go through this for a second. Macron will not be president beyond his current office in France. He won't. They're going to remove him for sure. He's lost the race. He's below 20% approval rate. He's got a riot that's been going on in Paris now for almost 2 months. Or it's actually over the 2-month mark now, 9 weeks. They even did a little false flag over there to try to end the protests, and that didn't do shit. Okay. So they're going to go into the Bilderberg group, which is where they recruit, they headhunt. Remember, go watch the 2004 CEO interview where he says, no, we don't run the world. We're a headhunting agency. Oh, really? For what? Oh, for world leaders. Oh, okay. No, that's not running the world, is it? But they're going to find some deep stater. And there's going to be a focus group and a bunch of think tanks. They're going to come together and go, where did Macron go wrong? What don't they like about that guy? It could be something like they don't like his face. Oh, yeah, you're right. He's kind of a weird dude. Okay, he's not ugly or anything. He did marry his teacher from high school or something, right? Love is blind. I get it. Nothing wrong with that, I guess. They're consenting adults. But I guess he was 15 when they started falling in love, you know what I'm saying? But anyway, I don't know if that number's right. That's what my good friend told me, who follows this kind of stuff. But they're going to say, look, he said this, he did this photo op, he took this stance, he blamed this, blah, blah, blah. And they're going to say, okay, this can never happen again. All of these things that he said aren't going to happen. So what are we going to do? We still have to get the goals that he was installed to get. Well, we're going to have to throw the election. So let's get that whole group going. Oh, yeah, no problem. France, throwing elections is easy. Well, wait a minute. We got the yellow vest now. Well, their hubris will say, oh, don't even worry about it. Okay. So this next person, maybe it's a female. Who knows? Well, maybe put a woman in there. That way they can't yell at her. Well, if they yell at her, we'll call it sexist. Should be defended by her gender. Something's going on like crazy in the United States of America, right? Merkel will have the same type of replacement. This stuff is so strategic. I don't know. I've been involved with a few think tanks in my lifetime. Most of the time as a presenter. And so, but sometimes, sitting around dreaming up things that were entertainment-based, not nefarious business things, or maybe like a normal business kind of thing. But usually I'm observing or presenting, areas where technology might go, sort of thing, right? But they're very strategic. They go on for weeks and weeks. Some of them meet regularly. There's one in Los Angeles that meets regularly. It's called Metal. And they just talk about business constantly. These people are just coming in there with business cards from all over the world. They're trying to find investors. Don't expect them to ever listen to you. It's basically, you better know who you're meeting when you're there, sort of thing. But believe me, the ones that pick our leaders are, they're not in the yellow pages, as we used to say in the United States of America. They don't have a website probably that would really reveal what they do. It'd be very symbolic. We're political strategery people, right? But now, how much does an average citizen invest in any sort of counter strategy for anything? I don't think that much. You're thinking, okay, here's how the think tank might think about us, right? Well, one, we are sheep when we need to follow and cattle when we need to be slaughtered. Okay? Those are the two terms you understand that we are called by them. The idea is to say, okay, if we have economic prosperity, then people have time to think. They have time to invest money and investigate things. They got time to sit around at night looking at their computer, watching Deep Thoughts videos. Okay. But when you've just lost your job, you got 2 kids that are still in school, they need to have the roof over their head, you got a couple car loans, your kids are, costing you this and that, whatever. How much time do you have to mess around and think about things? Not a whole lot, right? And why? They've created so many personal wars for you, you have no time left. Well, they're thinking really hard about how to screw you over, take everything away. So if you are privileged enough to have some time left to invest in this sort of thing, well, then you're going to have to step up and be the hero. And you might be the counter archetype of a hero, right? Let me give you some examples. I won't mention names because I don't know what they would think about me throwing them in the middle of this episode. But we've had some followers of this show start their own shows. I mentioned almost all these people at one point. Now, let's just say one of them is I guess like late 20s, early 30s male. And even though he's a father, he cares about the world, and he makes time. Whatever his regimen is, he's got time. He obviously makes a show. We have another person that is seemingly, I guess, retired. Maybe he's always been a housewife. I'm not sure what the background is. She created a show that really engaged some of these more controversial conspiracies. She went into flat earth. She went into consciousness and dreams and all kinds of wild stuff, because that's what appealed to her. But now imagine you're a guy, so you view yourself as Bruce Willis or Sylvester Stallone, or maybe a more academic, brilliant person, a Marshall McLuhan or a Thomas Sowell or a Martin Luther King kind of person, right? And you don't have any real problem thinking of yourself as rising to the hero level. But let's just say you're a female and you've been a stay-at-home mom. You haven't been in the corporate world, and you know there's things you don't know because you just haven't experienced it yet. But you're watching the same stuff, and you're parsing the same reality, and you're finding out that you're able to make connections that all your guy buddies, your husband's buddies, or whatever, aren't able to put together. You find yourself more often in conversations clarifying points for people, dismissing myths versus reality. Someone's got something wrong about somebody, about history or whatever. Okay. You don't hear, you do hear if you pay attention. There's a lot of housewives that have invented things and blown up a particular industry. They have an invention, literally, that people buy in their homes by the tens of millions, and they become very wealthy. But there's nothing stopping you from going from that perceivable non-leadership position in the world. You have to put up with kids, right? And you're already battle-hardened, right? And moving into the world of starting your own channel, starting your own blog. But you don't have to completely reach out if that's not your game. But, maybe in a comment on a video, you make a really good sound comment. People read it. I think that, here's something that I don't know if I mentioned this before, but let me say this here as we're wrapping up this episode. Here's what's really weird for me. And ladies, bear with me for a second, because I'm on your side in this comment here. But I'm going to start it off in a traditional stereotype that's not going to sound like I'm on your side. Thomas Sowell, who's a brilliant man here in America, proved back in the 70s that women who are unmarried, meaning without children in his category, who are trained exactly like men, make more money than men when they take a job. So he says wage inequality is bullshit. It's qualification inequality that you're complaining about. And he proved it. He said women that raise kids and stay out of the public sector for 10 years and then try to join with perhaps a degree that's 10 years old or a fresh degree, they don't have the experience that the other people have, either the women that never stopped or the men that were always in the game. But there's this huge we are equal to you sort of broad stroke brush that you have to hear from a lot of females, especially the feminists, right? And so then I say, I only wish that was the truth. And they'll go, why? And I go, well, name a famous female car designer. Name a famous, a well-known. I've met a couple in my lifetime, but my God, they're like needles inside galaxies, right? I've been in engineering, software engineering my whole life, and video games especially. There was one girl who is probably the most brilliant coder I've ever met, who's a female, who worked on EverQuest. She worked at EA for a little while, and her and I made real good friends. Beautiful girl who you would think, she was so pretty that you would think she would never have to study, she would never have to do anything, she could just marry a handsome guy and pick which one, right? But no, she stayed single, she stayed brilliant, and she was schooling all these dudes, right? Very rare situation. Well, no guy in the software business wants to be sitting with a bunch of sausages, right? We want women everywhere in that business, but they don't show up. Women are supposed to be barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen because that's their game. But the ovens, the refrigerators, the dishwashers, the sinks, all invented by guys. Nobody wants that to be the truth. It just is the truth. Name a famous female classical composer. Now, of course, those of you who are hip are going, well, dude, it's because of repression. Yes, exactly. Women were kept away from work. They, and honestly, most of them didn't dislike it. They got to stay home and raise kids and become heroes to humans, right? Whereas these guys run off and work for corporations that didn't care if they died on the way to work, right? But here's the big stunner in 2019 for me. Where do boys come from? Oh, women. Women give birth to all sexes. Both of them. Okay. So what's the difference genetically between a male and a female? There's an X chromosome and a Y chromosome. Well, what does that X chromosome do and the Y chromosome do? Well, on a biological anatomy level, bits and pieces turn into different things. These nipples start having more of a purpose. Okay. All right. Now, we also know that chemically in the brain, the female is, over however many years of design or evolution, is more empathetic by nature, more sensitive, because children need that connection. They need that connection. Now, I would say men in the 21st century have become very beta, and they've become more sensitive as well. Unfortunately, they've had to, they've been convinced to give up their masculinity at the same time. It's a bummer, right? But here we are in the middle of a feminist movement that's been going on for 30 years. Much longer than that, but early 90s, we have some definite businesses and groups that form to champion that. And it goes all the way back to Eleanor Roosevelt, and Joan of Arc, right? But now we're sitting in a world where the only difference we have is some anatomy, okay? We know there's some predispositions for how girls think and boys think. Again, boys are driven to have sex 10 times more than females. And I know there's some females out there that could show men up. I do know, but they're rare, right? Every boy is the same way, okay? Whether they're straight or gay or whatever, right? They're still punching for that thing. So now we have a bunch of movies with a bunch of girl heroes. There's tolerance movements, right? I think parents are getting probably better about it. Girls now, at least in America, they see themselves having careers. They're making choices about when they're going to have their career versus having children. Some women still want the child stay-at-home mom life. We have to honor those women with all of our power. But now here's the thing. We're still indoctrinated to be at war with each other. But we're really just a couple chromosomes, or one chromosome that flips, right? It causes a bunch of protein patterns to change because the protein patterns are what carry those instructions to the DNA, right? But why are we so different now? And maybe we're not. I don't, we don't have the God facts on that situation. But right now, females should be getting into everything. We should see females penetrating every male business on planet Earth. Now, I teach a lot of students from time to time, right? I'm not teaching right now, but when I do, I go for months and months and months. And I will say that I have seen a tremendous amount of female engineers. I follow some of them on Instagram. I'm old enough to be their dad, and I'm just following them because they'll take pictures of their code, right? They'll post memes that are funny code memes, and it just warms my heart every time I see them do that because I'm like, wow, this girl got so into coding that this meme is only understood by advanced programmers. That's awesome. That's just great. The reason why I mention that is that I want you females to understand that we need you to be heroes as well. Obviously, those of you who raise children and get along with a partner of any sex, you're always a hero when you do that. But we need it to be extroverted heroes. You have to find a way to touch other people's hearts. If you're super empathetic and you have this soft, beautiful voice, my God, people will listen to you 5,000 times more likely than they'll ever listen to me smoking a cigar in black and white, cussing like a sailor. You have a power I don't have. I just want to remind you of that. Most sentient, intelligent men do not fear strong women. It's just some shitty meme that goes out every once in a while from my friends. I'm like, oh, really? Every woman that I ever grew up with could kick your ass. I mean, they were tough hombre women who had, who maintained their beautiful, soft grandma spirits, aunts, moms, whatever. But they will not take shit from anybody, and they're fair about it. Hey, are they always right about what their opinion is? Of course, it's just in the law of averages, maybe. But they still were females. They still dressed like females. They smelled like females. It was beautiful. Give you a big hug that no one else can give you but a female. They went, oh, when you had a problem in life, right? Melting your heart. But at the same time, when shit hit the fan, they would go stoic and handle the problem and then pop right back into being a female. Again, that's a superpower. That's a superpower. Guys have to struggle their entire lives to get the sensibility that a girl can have at 30 years old, right? I say that now because we're so regressed in our maturity levels, right? I think I told you guys a story where one of my grandmothers became a school teacher. And back in the, let's see, what would have been late 20s, early 30s. In fact, it would have been 1929. She was living in a house because the city that you teach in provided living quarters for you, but it was usually a room in someone's house in the town. And this guy that was the father in the house, when he drank, he got a little frisky. And he happened to be drinking, and he had his buddies over, as the story's told. And the women, fixed the food and cleaned it up and that kind of thing. The guy sat out front. And his buddies were giving him crap like, boy, she's gorgeous. I bet you'd love to, hit that, as they might have said. And so he got all riled up, in his bravado and went into the other room. And my grandmother was cleaning dishes next to his wife. And I think she said he grabbed her butt. It was 1929. Different standards in the world. But at 17 years old, probably about 5'6", probably about $110, she turned around and punched him in the nose. I think she said she broke his nose because it was bleeding really bad and it was dented forever, right? And his wife turned to my grandmother and said, thank you very much, because that was so disrespectful to me, let alone you. I'm so sorry. And my grandmother finished the dishes, grabbed her shit, and left, right? But are you telling me that's a weak woman, repressed back in 1929? No. We were a lot stronger back in the day. We just weren't convinced that there was a war going on about it, right? How many asses do you think that guy grabbed after that moment? I'm going to say if his wife didn't leave him, which they probably didn't because they had more standards back in those days, I'd say 0. Anyway, I think you feel me. I hope you guys dig these more cerebral episodes. These are the ones that I personally gain more satisfaction from, these kind of episodes, because it's, again, here's the litmus test for me with an episode. Any topic whatsoever. If we're not talking about it, but we're all thinking about it, that's the thing we need to be talking about, right? When I managed my own business, or I was a manager or a CEO of some other company, my whole thing was, you get these situations brewing inside the company where something's going bad or there's a perceived problem that really doesn't exist. I'd walk in the room, make sure everyone's happy and calm, and get your cookies and whatever, and I'd say, okay, first thing out of my mouth is the elephant in the room. And everyone just has a huge sigh of relief, and because I present it in a nice way, and I say, look, this isn't going to be a problem for us. I realize this is a challenge here, here, and here, but look, I already got a plan. That's why they hired me, to protect you guys from these problems. And I'm going to prove it to you. We're going to have a very quick, fast change, right? And that's kind of why I have respect for our president in the United States, because I've been in his shoes 1,000 times at a micro level, right? Big problem in the room, hit it. Anybody who wants to cock block you and carry the deep state agenda, you're going to expect me to be nice to you? I'll be nice to you a couple times. I'll even go up to the podium like he does and say, well, I know my friends on the left are going to work with me and we're going to come up with a partisan solution for something. And when they run out to their podium and they carry a deep state agenda and they call me names, yeah, you want me to continue being a nice guy in the public about you? And you backstab me right in front of everybody? Maybe give you one more chance, and after that, it's strike 3, you're out, and we're not going to be friends. And you will be eliminated because I don't lose. And I think that's what the president does, right? That's why I understand the guy. Is he not refined and uncouth? Well, if you understand that he might be choosing his words very carefully and choosing the perception, the optics to the outside world, yeah, he's fighting a war, first for the United States of America, second for the outside world, right? What happens when China can't get away with $500 billion worth of shitty imports? I don't mean bad products, but I mean these tariffs are horrible, right? Well, they're going to have to start paying their people more, and their economy is going to rise to our economy. And then we're going to be on the same playing level. Their people don't necessarily need more money per day, but they're going to have the inflation bubble that we have. They're going to have to dilute their money, and then milk costs 10 times as much, but they make 10 times as much. This is what we've been doing in America forever to run away from our debt. I don't know if the yellow vest would be going on in France if we didn't have this giant movement of awakening because of the internet, because perhaps some of the policy changes in America, because people are seeing what they can do to their own country. They're like, we have power. We're not doing this because of Trump. But these guys are wearing QAnon branded yellow vests. I don't see QAnon posting much about France. He posts about this country and fixing this country. But they drew enough idealistic force from that movement, whether it be a LARP or real, it doesn't matter. It's becoming real in people's hearts, right? Trust the plan, as they say, right? We're part of the plan. We have our own agenda. Talk about these things that no one talks about because it affects your life. Understand there's wars on all levels, not just the ones with bloodbaths in the Middle East. Anyway, if you haven't been to deepthoughtsradio.com, please go. I'll make it a short bumper today. You can change the feed from video to audio. There's a locked Facebook group and a Patreon page. Take care of yourself and someone else, and I'll see you in the next Deep Thoughts. Over now.